When asteroid 2024 YR4 was discovered a few weeks ago, it garnered attention primarily because it was predicted to collide with Earth in December 2032. In the time that followed, the impact risk was first upgraded to 2.2% and then 3.1%, but NASA has now released a new update that resets the probability of the object coming into close contact with us in just over 7 years to 0. However, could this clear signal also be reversed in the future? And why is the Moon still not out of the woods? In the meantime, though the so-called Tunguska event of 1908 did not literally bring the world to its knees, it did topple about 60 million trees in Siberia and produce a thunderous roar of primal force that could be heard more than 500 kilometers away. However, what would actually happen if an asteroid were to approach Earth in the present day? What if our automatic telescope network were to strike? Our blue home planet has repeatedly been caught in the crosshairs of asteroids throughout its existence, despite all the orbital observations. NASA and ESA experts are already routinely rehearsing this unpleasant scenario, simulating all the possible steps that would need to be taken in such a case, from detection to defense or evacuation. But recently, on December 27, 2024 to be exact, the test run was abruptly turned into a real emergency. Suddenly the alarm went off, and a collision with a space rock seemed inevitable. The discovery of a celestial body that may have been on a collision course with Earth was reported by the telescope of the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System stationed in Chile. The report was sent immediately to experts and observatories worldwide via the International Asteroid Warning Network. It was soon determined that the rock, which was given the name 2024 YR4, could actually strike the Earth on December 22, 2032, as expressed in figures. This simply means that the corresponding impact probability was estimated at around 1.2%, or 1 in 83. And even though this may not have seemed like much at first, 2024 YR4 achieved the second highest value ever recorded on the Turing risk scale. More specifically, the lump was placed on the third level of the scale, meaning that if an impact were to occur, we would be dealing with an object that has a collision probability of more than 1% and would cause severe local destruction. As of right now, we only know of one other asteroid, Eos, that has reached the fourth level, but it is now back at level 0, meaning that a direct hit in 2029 is now regarded as out of the question as long as its trajectory stays the same. However, if we assume the worst-case scenario at this point, and assume that 2024 YR4 will actually strike Earth, what would that mean for our planet and its inhabitants? Could the asteroid turn into a dinosaur killer? Fortunately, this is extremely unlikely for a number of reasons, one of which is the size of the asteroid, whereas the one that wiped out the dinosaurs had a diameter of 14 kilometers. 2024 YR4 is estimated to be only 40 to 90 m across. This roughly corresponds to the dimensions of the suspected originator of the Tunguska event. And even if you are not at the impact site, the asteroid would not cause a global catastrophe. Nevertheless, NASA emphasizes that in this case, serious devastation would be expected within a radius of 50 kilometers, and at first, it even looked as if the probability of this was higher than initially thought, because after the ESA carried out a new data analysis, at the beginning of February, it first classified the risk of an impact as 1, height, and then soon after, as 2.2% in the same breath. However, the experts reminded us that this assessment is anything but set in stone. On the contrary, on the one hand, there is the fact that in 2024, YR4 will be moving in an almost straight line towards Earth, making it extremely difficult to analyze, even with large telescopes. And on the other hand, although the Earth is basically in the region that the asteroid will pass through in December 2032, this potential impact zone is also around 2 million km wide, and thus significantly larger than the average distance between the Sun and the Earth. Accordingly, the scenario in which the asteroid would simply rush past us seemed just as likely, which is probably why the experts were all the more surprised. When the risk was raised again a few days later, specifically NASA astronomers have now raised the probability of a hit in 7 years to 1%, but it now appears that Earth has finally pulled its head out of the asteroid noose. Further observations have now narrowed and refined the trajectory to such an extent that we can say much more precisely where YR4 will fly in the future, and according to this data, we are no longer within the danger zone, and the risk of impact has consequently been downgraded to 0% in light of this. The experts are now saying that, and I quote, "There is no significant potential for this asteroid to impact within the next 100 years. The reason why this prognosis was made so far beyond the year 2032 is that the rock will enter our realm regularly in the future and will come relatively close 7 times between 2036 and 2076 alone in order to get to the bottom of the object's background anyway. The James Webb Telescope is now to turn its sharp infrared view on it. Since the heat radiated by the asteroid, an infrared light reflects its true size much more precisely than in the visible spectrum. The researchers want to use this to get to the bottom of the exact dimensions of the boulder. How we might react if worse comes to worse, so far so reassuring. But unlike on Earth, experts have not yet given the all-clear for our constant companion. In fact, there is still a 1.7% probability that the Moon will experience an unexpected asteroid rendezvous. However, this would not be particularly dramatic since our satellite has no atmosphere, and despite all the secret moon base rumors, officially contains no inhabitants. The only consequence to be expected would be another large crater. And the fact that astronomers have now succeeded in shedding much more light on the asteroids, darkness is practical to say the least. After all, the bottom line is that we only have until the end of May 2024 to keep a closer eye on YR4. After that, it will no longer be visible from Earth for the time being. It's currently moving away from us and will spend several years in the future in the remote part of its eccentric orbit. And on the far side of the Sun, it will not return to our terrestrial field of vision until 2028. But since the impact probability is, as already mentioned, 0% further observation would probably only serve purely scientific purposes anyway, or will it? Well, who knows, because if we recall the briefly mentioned asteroid Aus at this point, it becomes clear to us that in purely theoretical terms, things can happen that turn an actually harmless lump back into a real danger. According to Paul Wyer of the University of Western Ontario, Aus could collide with another object and still make its way towards Earth. However, the conditions required for this are very specific, and Wyer estimates that the risk of an impact in 2029 is less than 1 in 2 billion, which is not the same as 0. In other words, what could we do if Aus or 2024 YR4 threatened to crash into Earth? Well, in plain English, that is exactly what we have already done, as NASA has already impressively demonstrated how it can be done in fall 2022. At that time, the asteroid moon Dioros, which has a diameter of about 165 meters, was the focus of the DART mission. The anonymous spacecraft had assumed the role of a flying battering ram, purposefully striking the asteroid's surface, transferring enough momentum to shorten its orbit around the parent asteroid in the same breath. The impact was sufficient to successfully manipulate the orbit and eject approximately 900,000 kilograms of material into space. Some of this material could even fall to Earth in the form of shooting stars in the 2030s, giving us the first man-made meteor shower in history. Additionally, DART demonstrated that relatively small means are sufficient to counter great dangers. Did you know that your man-made click can earn you a new subscription? Simply click the thumbs up button, and to ensure you never miss another video, subscribe now. We'll see you soon.